Four straight losses at a pivotal point in the season. How does Miami respond? Will they figure it out or keep on losing? Plus, how has Kevin Love fit in during his first two games? And could the return of Kyle Lowry help push the Heat to a much-needed win over the 76ers? We break it all down in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or wherever you get your podcasts, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. Well, after losing two straight games before the All-Star break, and there are two games since coming back from the break, including Friday's loss in Milwaukee and Saturday in Charlotte, the Miami Heat have lost a season-high 4 games in a row. Jimmy Butler's saying he's tired of losing. Tyler Herro is saying that the Heat need to come together. The Kevin Love addition hasn't paid off. The Heat now are 32-29. There's 21 games left. David, let's just jump right into this because this feels right, like this moment right now is the pivot point in Miami's season. Either they are going to go on a run here that could prove to them and the rest of the league that they are a playoff caliber team and can string together some wins to try to get back into the real playoff race and not the play-in area, which is where they're at now. Or they can go the other way and basically cement their place in, at the best, the play-in tournament, right? And then you see where it goes from there. It'll start tonight in Philadelphia, but after this game in Philadelphia, there's a very important 6-game homestand. And I'll say that this is the most important stretch in Miami's season right now. This 6-game homestand, because you are at home, and so you have an advantage with that, kind of an advantage and an opportunity to get right. But these teams are hard coming up too. We'll get to all of that. But, I mean, what do you think about just it felt like this team was going to be so refreshed, so reinvigorated. The Kevin Love, Cody Zeller additions, you and I talked about it the last time we did a podcast. Like, it felt like this team had such a good energy around it, but wow, what a way to take the wind out of his sails, more than 2 losses in a row.
Yeah, it's obvious that good vibes alone aren't enough to carry you to a victory in the NBA. And that's the disappointing thing, I think, when you're watching how the team performed against the Milwaukee Bucks, the first of a back-to-back set. And then you go into Charlotte looking to just kind of find your rhythm. You're going up against an inferior team, or at least in theory, an inferior team, a team that struggles offensively.
Yeah.
And the same problems that have plagued Miami all season long, particularly their shooting woes, crops up again. And that's basically what it comes down to. It's I don't think, and we'll talk about this more in detail later on, I don't think the Love and Zeller additions have been net negatives or anything like that. They just come at a time when neither player is good enough to help propel Miami into a sure victory. And they don't correct the problems across the roster. You've got Victor Oladipo going basically 1 of 12 in these last 2 games. You've got Gabe Vincent continuing to struggle, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson. You're not getting any shooting. You're not getting any support from your bench. You haven't really gotten anything. Caleb Martin had a big game against the Milwaukee Bucks with 17 points, and that was too little too late. That was basically when Miami was already getting blown out by 30, and he just had the energy wanting to prove, you know what, I'm still a starter quality player. At the same time, there's just so many different glaring weaknesses across this roster in terms of their lack of offense or lack of shooting, and they just can't seem to correct it. And it's somewhat inexplicable. Like, the vibes should have been a big part of helping carry Miami to something. And yet when you translate that into the floor and you see, well, guess what? We keep missing tons of open looks from three-point range. That's the biggest issue right there. And I don't know what the problem is. I wondered this via Twitter following the Bucks game or midway through the Bucks game. It's like, where did things just go so wrong for this team in terms of their shooting? And they somehow have to figure it out. You've got a frustrated Jimmy Butler who wants to win. You bring in Kevin Love here, and there's no look. Nobody's going to feel sorry for somebody making $3 million for a 2-month stint, what could be just a 2-month stint in Miami. At the same time, like, he's, you know, you have to question if you can continue to lure big name free agents or even older players like him, because you have to be able to show that you're a good quality team, that you've got some kind of integrity, some desire to just become a better version of yourself. And
Well, I think the
Miami just looks
desire,
lost.
the desire is there. I mean,
Maybe.
it is. I'm telling you, like when Jimmy Butler is there saying, "I'm tired of losing," and Tyler Herro after the Charlotte game is saying, "We could, this is the moment in our season where we can come together or split apart," and those are alarming things to hear, right? And I'm not saying that this team is about to fall apart. I'm just saying that this team is really. This has been a grinding season for them. They have just been. It just feels like they feel like they're putting the work in, that they have the want to. They have all those Miami Heat ingredients that they always talk about, right? And yet they just can't get it to happen. They just and it comes down to the thing that you said earlier. This team can't make a shot. This team cannot make a freaking shot. In these last 4 games, they are shooting 28.8% on threes. So you and I, in the Miami Heat and the rest of the NBA, and Jimmy Butler and Tyler Herro and Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley and Andy Ellsberg and Adam Simon and Mickey Harrison and everybody has been waiting for this team to go the other way, because they've been shooting 34%, 33% all year on three-pointers. And you're like, well, it only has to get better. No, it can get worse. Apparently, it can get worse. It can get to 29%, which is where the Heat are now. And at least in these last 4 games, they are 15 of 59 on wide open threes. Those ones that you can look up on NBA stats page where the defenders with not within 6 feet. So they're getting open looks. They're not making them. And honestly, David, I don't even know if it's good offense or if it's defense is just saying we don't even care enough to close out anymore because you're that bad at shooting. We're not even going to do it. Even in the last 20 games of the year, playoff stretch, we're not even going to close out because we don't think you're going to make this shot. And you know what? They aren't making these shots. That part is demoralizing. So when it is the most demoralizing thing in the sport is getting the looks that you want and then not making them, getting those shots off and just not making them. It's such a degree that you're like, man, whatever we do, perfect screen in the middle of the floor, pick and roll, getting to our spots, getting to the free throw line, all these things, but we can't make a three. And then you couple that with the fact that you lose to the Bucks in Milwaukee when Giannis leaves the game early and never comes back. You lose to Charlotte, and you said you were being kind of nice to Charlotte. They stink, all right? You should not. No team should lose to the Hornets, right? The Rockets should compete with the Hornets. Like, that should be a competitive game for Houston, and they stink too. Like, there's no excuse to lose to Charlotte in Charlotte on the second night of a back-to-back even. And Charlotte was on the second night of a back-to-back too, by the way. So that's definitely no excuse. These are demoralizing losses coupled with the fact that you can't make any shots. As much as the good vibes could exist, it's really easy to get rid of those good vibes if you're not making your shots. And that's what this all comes down to. And I don't know that there's anything else you could do. What can you do? I feel like we've had this conversation over and over again, other than just like, you just wait. You just wait, right? And Spo loves to use that word ignitable, and this team is just not igniting. They're just not.
It feels and very, very different situation in terms of where Miami was in the standings last year when the incident happened. But you remember the tense moment when Jimmy Butler exploded at Eric Spoelstra in the midst of a long losing streak. I think it was also the 4th game of a 4-game losing streak. Jimmy Butler snaps at Eric Spoelstra. Udonis Haslem launches at Jimmy, and things are starting to fall apart for a team that had been unpredictably good. And they found the resilience there. Maybe that's just part of the makeup of this team, is that they need to hit rock bottom and have some of that tension. I don't know. Eric Spoelstra loves the idea of change emerging from chaos. And I don't think he's at a point where he's going to start, needling Jimmy Butler to the degree where he might, inspire some kind of a verbal lashing or something like that. But I don't know. Maybe they just needed to hit this low point so that they can quit looking outside of their own roster for any kind of change. Yeah. It's not about a trade.
It feels different. It feels different. I mean, yeah, that's definitely that's a great point. Like, this is it. This is all 15 guys rostered. There's no trade deadline. There's no buyout market. This is your team. And again, it is demoralizing. I'm going to keep going back to that word. When you bring in Kevin Love and you bring in Cody Zeller and you're all excited, Kevin Love, this great 3-point shooter, stretch big, crit next to Bam. You know what? We're going to start him right away. And then it just doesn't work out. And he's not really making shots either. So, look, the Kevin Love experience, we're 2 games into it. What has worked, what hasn't worked, that's what we're going to talk about next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. It really is just that simple. The thing I like about PrizePicks the most is that you're not going against anybody else. You're going just against the projections, and you can say, let's say Miami will make more than 10 3-pointers tonight against the Philadelphia 76ers. You can bet the less than or more than those made 3-pointers. At this point, I'd say probably a safe bet to take less than that. But at the same time, look, you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. It's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you can imagine. Men's and women's college basketball, the NBA, of course, Major League Baseball is ramping up. Euro basketball, disc golf, boxing, you name it, PrizePicks has you covered. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe and fast withdrawals. And they're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the PrizePicks app, go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget enter your promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up today.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Locked On Heat is also available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please do subscribe. Kevin Love, he started his first 2 games as a member of the Miami Heat. I know I was surprised that Spo was so quick to insert him into the starting group. We haven't talked since that decision was made. David, what was your reaction when we found out that Kevin Love was starting, and what do you think of how he's played so far?
We did talk about after practice that my feeling was that Spo's comments, Kevin's comments, everybody else on the team's comments were kind of open-ended, right? And This is the open end of it, is that, you know what, we're kind of throwing a curveball here. We're trying to see if we can inject a little energy into that starting lineup. It's kind of hard to break it down because he really struggled against the Milwaukee Bucks, but that was such an ugly loss in general, and I don't think he was necessarily at the root of it. A big part of that was the lack of shooting, the lack of bench production. Everybody kind of trying to adjust and find their roles. They have remained very steadfast in saying it's not the addition of Love and Zeller that's throwing everybody off. But I still think that there are degrees of trying to figure out your role and how to play alongside them. There was one possession early in the Charlotte loss where normally would have been a pretty seamless switch, but Kevin Love wound up staying on the perimeter, guarding somebody in a pick and roll situation there. And then Bam didn't either call out the switch or Love didn't even hear it. And it was led to a wide open 3-pointer, another wide open 3-pointer for the Hornets, who is not a particularly good shooting team. So there are instances there where there's going to be some acclimation process that's going to be slow. Overall, I'd say he's been fine. I don't think he's particularly bad. I think he's been better on defense than his most vocal critics would say. I think the rebounding has been excellent. I think the outlet passing, the floor spacing, the concepts that you and I talked about in terms of what he would bring to the table have all been manifesting perfectly. He is exactly the kind of player on paper that Miami has needed for most of the season. And he's been solid or okay, if unspectacular, in that role. But there needs to be something more. And this is why when we had our show last week. Yeah, go for it, man.
I like the idea of kind of staying with the glass half full approach, and then we can kind of go half empty after this, right? So let's start with it, because I got some stuff on the half empty side, and I'm gonna try to put a pin in that, because I really want to start with the half full, because you're right. On paper, he's basically been exactly what we thought he was going to be. I am surprised that Spo started him. I said on the show that I didn't think he was going to do it because coaches tend to be a little conservative, and I underestimated Erik Spoelstra. Erik Spoelstra is bold, right? He will do things like this every once in a while when he feels like it's sort of what the team needs. I think back even to when he decided to start Chris Bosh in the playoffs at center. And you're like, what is happening right now? And he determined that that's what the team needed in that moment. And it got him over the hump against the Pacers and all these other, and obviously got them that first championship of that era. And so he's been known to do something bold like this. I guess I was just surprised that he did it. I just didn't think that the starting lineup needed that boost. They were a plus 20, that group of Gabe Vincent, Tyler Herro, Jimmy Butler with Caleb Martin at the 4, and Bam Adebayo. Like, that was even with Kyle Lowry in for Gabe Vincent, that team was like a plus 9 net rating all year long, or plus 6 or something like that. I think it was plus 9.
My thought is, my thought is that it's something that we talked about, that the best version of this team probably has Love fitting the position more effectively than Caleb does in terms of the passing and everything else that he brings to the table.
I think it
and so you want to
creates a
test it as
certain
soon
amount
as
of
possible.
flexibility. No, and that's a good
Yes.
point. It is, and it gives them more flexibility, and it does. And this was a good point that a lot of people made, even though I was never anti Kevin Love starting. I just really didn't think it was going to I just didn't think it was going to happen. But it is the easiest way to get him and Bam to play the most minutes together. And if ultimately that's what you're trying to do, then that's the way to do it. And they're playing a ton of minutes together. The problem is that group has not played very well. All right, glass half full. Staying half full here. The screen setting has been awesome. The floor spacing has been real, right? Like, even though the Heat have not made shots, teams are still closing out on Kevin Love. They don't want to help off of him when he's in the corner. All this stuff is working. It's crazy because we see the outline of a team that's good. That if this team just makes its shots, if the offense can just make some of these open shots,
you've got to squint a little bit, but you can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the craziest thing, right? It's so weird. Like, on paper, it feels like it's working. Okay. There's the half full. Let's go half empty. This new starting lineup: Gabe Vincent, Tyler Herro, Jimmy Butler, Kevin Love, Bam Adebayo. They've been outscored by 18 points in their 32 minutes together over these last two games. Those are the raw numbers: 18 points in 32 minutes. That's how much they're getting outscored by. You want to do like the net rating stuff, the per 100 possessions? Let's do that too. They're getting outscored by 20.4 points per 100 possessions. They have an offensive rating of 92.4, which is basically not scoring. That's not scoring. Okay, that's the worst offensive rating in the league by a wide margin. One of the worst offensive ratings of all time. That would be terrible. A defensive rating of 112.9, which is fine. We could do that. I could give you some eye test stuff. The rebounding has overall been good with Kevin Love. I still think the conditioning needs to be worked on. He seems to be laboring up and down the court at times as further into his minutes. At the end of that Charlotte game, he basically gave up the game-clinching rebound to Mark Williams. The one that Mark Williams got on the putback, that was Kevin Love who failed to box out on that. And when you watch it, it kind of feels like he was just tired. I don't think it was a lack of paying attention. I don't think it was Kevin Love just not knowing what boxing out is, because he obviously does know what that is. I just think he looked tired and just didn't muscle through that last possession. And Mark Williams ends up they probably lose that game anyway. But the fact that cinched the game for Charlotte, that's not a good look for Kevin Love. Overall, his rebounding has been a plus. That was a miss on his end. So those are, to me, the negatives. That's the glass half empty, is that, hey, as much as you were hoping that the starting lineup would be reinvigorating, it's actually been way worse than the starting lineup that you replaced it with.
What do you think have been the ripple effects across the starting lineup? And I think more importantly, even in the bench unit, because the starters don't feel like the problem, although you've had some up and down. You had a strong Jimmy game against the Bucks early on, in particular, when it seemed like they might be able to compete at a high level. And then he kind of peters off after that. He doesn't really play much because by that point it's a blowout. You're not gonna trot him out there on the first night of a back-to-back set. And then he has a good game against the Hornets, although he's not aggressive at his shot, but he does get to the line 20 times. Then you have a big Tyler Herro game on Saturday night, and he struggled on Friday night against the Bucks. You've got Gabe Vincent, who's been kind of really, really poor, to be honest with you. It's just, and Bam seems like he's been a less aggressive version of himself too, and he's not getting to the line as much. He didn't take a lot of shots against the Bucks. Again, a byproduct of not playing much. But has the Caleb Martin to the bench thing kind of thrown off everybody's chemistry, or is it just a matter of nobody's making shots, whether you're a starter or a bench player, and you can't really blame Kevin Love for it?
I think that it's a very good point that you're making. Caleb Martin started 60 games, and to basically now he's a starter, and he acts like a starter, and he spent 60 games trying to become a starter, and then he suddenly gets moved into the bench group, and he's like, everybody's like, oh, he could do what he did for them last year. He's a different player than he was last year now. He acts differently. He approaches the game differently. He's better. I do think that is a little bit different. It throws things off a little bit because you also have Victor Oladipo in that bench unit trying to find his way back and make the most of these next 20 games. It's with Gabe Vincent in the starting group and no Kyle Lowry for the last several games. I don't know that there's no real backup ball handler because they also had Jamari Bouye playing that position. And then they, after these buyout additions with Zeller and Love, there is no backup point guard behind Gabe Vincent. No traditional point guard, I should say. Although they do a good job of staggering their ball handlers. It's weird. It's a second unit that's really not played together all that much, and doesn't really have any sort of chemistry. And that's the other thing I thought too is if you bring Kevin Love off the bench, he at least gives that second unit some sort of identity. And I do like I really like what I've seen from Cody Zeller a lot.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And so maybe it's just trying to find out who's going to have the chemistry with Zeller. Maybe it's as simple as, all right, Kyle Lowry's back and he goes back into the starting lineup, and it's just Gabe Vincent and Cody Zeller running pick and roll in that second unit, and that's just the second unit identity. You just do that and hope somebody makes shots. Again, it keeps coming down to just hope the floor spacers are making shots. But the Kyle Lowry addition could have another ripple effect on everything, right? And we could see him back as soon as tonight. We'll tell you what that could mean for the Miami Heat, what that could mean for Kyle Lowry going forward next. But first, David, tell listeners about our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Built. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you've got to try a Built Bar. Look, we just got through the holidays. I know everybody's goal is usually to eat a little healthier during the year. And if you're like me, you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise taste, then I've got just the thing for you. You've got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious. You won't think they're good for you, but they're perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but the bars taste just like a candy bar, so you don't miss any of the taste. You're not sacrificing anything. And what's better is they're even healthier for you. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars from Built.com. You can still do that, but now you can also get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Just head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bar. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs if you're close to a Sam's Club. Run in, grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. And as always, you can always go to Built.com.
Reach Locked On Heat on Twitter, Instagram, email us, lockedonheat@gmail.com. We'll get to some of the guys coming back and some of the players newly listed on the injury report here in a second. But I wanted to just go back to something that I referenced earlier in the show, David. This upcoming 6-game homestand is the make or break stretch of the Miami Heat season. They play in Philadelphia tonight, and then afterwards they get a game against the 76ers back in Miami. And then following that, it's the Knicks, it's the Hawks twice, and it's the Cavs twice. So some interesting things here. Number one, you get one of your longest home stands of the year at a crucial point in your season. The other part of it is these are tough teams. Philly, the Knicks, the Hawks, the Cavs, those are all playoff playing teams, right? There's no easy ones in there. The Hawks have been playing better. The Cavs are awesome. They're playing as well as anybody.
Snyder joining the Hawks. They're going to get a little new coach boost for sure.
Yeah, perfect timing for the Heat. The other thing about it is you get 2 games against the Sixers. So you got like this little baseball series thing that the NBA has implemented over the last few years. So you get 2 games against the Sixers, the home and home. Then you get 2 games against the Hawks at home and 2 games against the Cavs at home. So I know it's against 3 different teams, David, and you got a Knicks game in there. But it kind of feels like the playoffs, right? Because you've got like these little series that you're seeing the same teams over and over again. And so if you needed anything from the Miami Heat to just sort of say, hey, here's a schedule for you. Either you ratchet up the intensity and you meet the moment and you make the most of this homestand and give your season the boost that it so desperately needs, or you can sink, right? And say, these are tough teams in a crucial part of our season when we're trying to figure things out and we're just not ready for this kind of competition against a Sixers team that feels like it knows exactly what it wants to do. The Cavaliers ditto for them, and the Heat are just sort of floundering here. Like I said, these are tough teams. This is a tough 6 games, 7 if you include tonight against Philadelphia. This is it. I think we're going to know exactly where the Miami Heat season is going after this 6-game homestand.
No
because
doubt.
The other part of this
doubt.
too is that there's only 21 games left. And I think if you're looking at what's going on in the East, it's going to take 46 wins minimum probably to make it out of the play-in tournament, right? You'll still get, I think the Heat are going to make the play-in tournament no matter what happens. But to make it out and to get that 6 seed, which is the one that they're shooting for at this point, I don't think anything higher than the 6 seed is even feasible at this point. To get to 46 wins, they're going to have to go 14-7 the rest of the way. 14-7, David. That would probably be the best record in the NBA over the next 21 games, or right up there with it. And when you're talking about only having 7 more losses that you can afford, and these are your next 7 games, that's tough too. So for all these reasons, like you have to make the most of this homestand. Because if you come out of this homestand 5-1, 4-2, that will be good enough to, I think, if you're the Heat, obviously stay in the mix for that 6 seed, but also give yourself that confidence that you need to make the most of the next 15 games it is in the year. And then after that, there's still some tough teams, but it's much easier than this next 6-game stretch.
Yeah, I don't even think it necessarily has to wait until the homestand. Like the homestand's a good opportunity for you to continue building on something, to establish your dominance at home. Miami did have that 7-game home winning streak that was snapped before the All-Star break, and they need to replicate that. But you've got to go into Philadelphia tonight, and we're recording this on a Monday morning, and you need to be able to show that you can compete with one of the better teams in the league. I am still not 100% sold on the 76ers as a contender. I know they're in theory a contender. I don't think they're in the same echelon as, say, a Phoenix or a Milwaukee or Boston, but this is the kind of team that you'll be competing in. This could be a potential 3-6 matchup in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Just start the playoffs. So you're not going to get any kind of breaks anytime soon. You've got to go in there now. I think you've got to be able to continue to show that you're trending in the right direction to start. You made your moves. You had those positive vibes. You've made mistakes. You've got to be able to figure it out. And I think there's frustration, and that's good. That puts the onus on you to say, you know what, we don't want to be frustrated anymore. We want to be able to show that we're a good team, that we're contending, that we're a playoff level team. We want to make things easier for ourselves in whatever way we possibly can. It starts against Philadelphia. Getting Kyle would be a boost, I think. I think he's we could talk about that if you want to.
Well, let's do it. Because Kyle Lowry, quick point on that. He's been upgraded to questionable. He was out, obviously. Upgraded to questionable as he's kind of coming back from this knee thing. I think there were tensions between Kyle Lowry and the organization in terms of the organization openly shopping him before the deadline. They were not able to find a move that made any kind of sense. The trade obviously never materialized. Kyle Lowry is still with the team, and they have worked together, according to the reporting recently. Kyle Lowry and the Miami Heat have to forge a path forward, and whatever that looks like, it starts potentially tonight with him coming back, and then we'll see what the offseason looks like and all these things. I'm with you. Kyle Lowry will help. The Gabe Vincent substitute teacher high has kind of come down a little bit, right? He has not played well. You talked about it. He's not been, the scorer that he was when you kind of first got into that starting group. And look, there's only 2 real point guards on this roster between Kyle Lowry and Gabe Vincent. And so just having one of them back at least gives that second unit, like we were talking about, another ball handler. Is Kyle Lowry going to come back and start right away? Is he going to come off the bench? If he does come off the bench again tonight as he's working his way back from this knee thing, which I think is possible. We see this all the time with a lot of players. If he comes off the bench and it works, do they continue to bring him off the bench? All these things. Regardless, I'm sure that he is now, because he has to have some sort of understanding with the organization of where he stands and what the plan is going to be and what it looks like. And maybe it is open-ended, the way that we thought the Kevin Love thing was open-ended. So we'll see, but him coming back is going to be a boost. I'm so sick of a good Kyle Lowry, a healthy Kyle Lowry is helpful to the Miami Heat. I don't know why it is. And given how much time he's had off and the fact that they've been patient, you're hoping that he is at least refreshed and not playing at the levels that he was playing at before the injury, because he was really struggling and he needs to be better than that.
Take away the contract, and I think that removes all the context for Heat fans in which they perceive his level of play and everything else. So,
but he was still playing poorly, David. No, he was still playing really poorly before he got hurt.
No doubt. But I still think that you can at least justify to yourself or explain it to yourself that he's injured, that he's been going through some personal things off the court. I know that a lot of fans don't necessarily take those factors into consideration, but they are there, they exist. And knowing that he is potentially coming back healthy, at the very least, you can acknowledge that a healthy Kyle Lowry, to your point, is a beneficial Kyle Lowry. I think.
Well, you said this the other day too. Like the time off could be so important for him. I mean, this is a guy who is at points in this season when he was refreshed and healthy and in good condition, was playing really, really well, was carrying Miami's offense for stretches. And he has not been that for several months. But if this time off has done him well, and there's an all-star break sandwiched in there too, like he could be really helpful. He could be a lot of what Miami needs right now, because then it moves potentially Gabe Vincent back into more of a scoring role versus sort of a facilitating role and all these things. We should talk about Tyler Herro. He's dealing with a right rib contusion, so he's listed as questionable. So TBD on whether or not he's going to be available tonight in Philadelphia and what that could look like going forward. Omer Yurtseven's still out, though we expect him to come back maybe next week, it sounds like. Or maybe, or even, I should say it's Monday, later this week, potentially, is the latest reporting on Omer Yurtseven. So we'll see, but listed as out for Philadelphia tonight. Anything else on this before we I'm really interested to see how they cover this James Harden, Joel Embiid pick and roll, which has been scorching the league right now. You obviously have Bam Adebayo, who's as good of a pick and roll defender as there is in the NBA, but you also have now Kevin Love sort of involved, and to see how they kind of, you talked about their defensive, maybe lack of communication or something, like how they kind of hammer this out. This is a good test for them tonight.
Absolutely. I hate to go on a limb here. I kind of think that this is the bounce back game for them, because you have no choice. Like, I think they understand what's at stake. They know they have to find a way to win it. They usually get up for games like this. You could have said the same thing about the Milwaukee Bucks. I think the Giannis thing threw everything off. I really think the Bucks play differently, not necessarily more dangerously, but more of a different role in terms of how Miami can guard them. And I think they weren't prepared for it, which is why it led to the incredible 3-point onslaught.
I like that. That's a good take. That the Heat would have won that game if Giannis didn't get hurt.
Well, I won't go that far, but they didn't play. They wouldn't have played them to the same level. They would have done things differently, and I think they would have been. It would have been a lot more competitive with Giannis out there. We saw it during the bubble. Like, there was the one game that they lost. I know that was a long time ago, but it was basically the same thing. They revert to a much more 3-point heavy offense, and without Giannis having to attack the wall over and over again, they do things a little differently. They move the ball better without the ball in Giannis's hands as much. So that being said,
you think the Bucks are better without Giannis? I mean,
absolutely.
Go ahead and say it.
Trade him. Why not?
Yeah, get some picks. Yeah.
Can we interest you in one lightly used Tyler Herro? I don't know.
No, I don't. I think that's probably giving up too much.
Okay, you're probably
right. If you could do just you just do like a Haywood Highsmith and Max Strus, on a sign and trade. That should probably get it done.
That'll grease the wheels.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. Important game tonight in Philadelphia. We'll be back here with a recap of that one, and then we'll be with you for the 6-game homestand that is coming up. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. Now make your second listen game-to-game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. David, thanks for joining me.
Shout out Dave Lillard, future Heat player.
Ooh, 71 points, man. Sheesh.